In the peaceful village of Okaro, where the red earth met the morning sun and children's laughter echoed through mango groves, lived a man named Obafemi, a wealthy cocoa farmer known for his firm handshake and sharp tongue. People respected him. Men sought his advice. Women praised his generosity. But behind all that admiration stood a secret he would carry like a shadow. His wife, Adirant, was a very breath of calm. Beautiful, soft-spoken, and gifted with a healing touch, she was a daughter of a well-known herbalist whose spirit many believed had passed into her. Villagers came to her when medicine failed. They left her presence lighter than they came. People often said, "Femi is lucky. That woman is a blessing." And it seemed so. Each morning, Adirant woke before the cocks, swept the compound, prepared warm water for her husband, and sang sweetly to herself as she cooked. She smiled with her eyes. She prayed with her heart. She honored her husband deeply, even when his mood grew cold, because that's what no one saw. Behind the smiles, Obafemi had changed. He no longer reached for her. He stopped laughing at her jokes. He began walking alone at night, whispering to himself under the stars. The shift began after a stranger visited his farm. A tall, dark-skinned herbalist named Baba Arogbo. His neck hung with charms, his voice dry like dust. He didn't come for cocoa. He came with a whisper. "You've worked hard, but you still walk like a man. What if you could walk like a king? What if wealth ran to you, not you to it? But to rise, something precious must fall. Something close must return to the earth." From that moment, the seed of evil was planted. Obafemi, once a praying man, stopped visiting the village shrine. He avoided his friends. He kept secrets in his silence. But worst of all, he began to look at Adirant like a possession, something to be measured, something to be used. Still, she loved him, until one morning, behind the hut, Adirant found something that made her heart freeze, a shattered calabash buried in the soil, its pieces marked with strange symbols. Symbols her mother once warned her about. Symbols tied to death and spiritual betrayal. She stared at the broken pieces for a long time, the broom still in her hand, the morning wind suddenly cold. That night, Obafemi sat by the fire sharpening a cutlass. His eyes did not blink. His hands moved slowly, thoughtfully. The flames lit his face, but his expression stayed in the dark. And while the village danced to the rhythm of distant drums, Adirant slept restlessly. In her dream, she saw a pit. She was in it, clawing at the earth, screaming. And standing above her, with a shovel in hand, was a man she had given her heart to, the one who once said, "I will protect you." Now let me ask you, if your own husband buried danger under your roof and your dream tried to show you, would you believe it? Or would you wake up and still trust him with your life? Let me know what you think in the comments, because what happens next will chill your bones. The following days passed like ghosts through the compound. Adirant noticed that her husband no longer looked her in the eye. He'd eat her food but never say thank you. He'd walk past her as if her body was made of wind. And whenever she tried to speak, he would wave her off like a fly. She thought maybe it was stress from the farm, or perhaps his pride was wounded from something unspoken. But Femi was not just stressed. He was planning. Every evening, he met with Baba Arogbo in secret corners of the forest. They would draw strange symbols on kola nuts, pour libations of gin, and chant words no ordinary farmer should know. Femi had already paid the first price, a white goat, a fowl with one red eye, and a drop of his own blood. But the final step? It had to be something precious, something that breathed, something that loved him. And so, his thoughts turned to Adirant. She, meanwhile, had begun to feel the heaviness in her chest, not from sickness, but from her spirit. Birds stopped perching near her windows. Her dreams grew darker. The pot of soup she made curdled without reason. Even the compound dog began barking at Femi at night. Still, She stayed. She remembered her vows. She remembered the boy he once was, the man who held her hand by the river, swearing to never let her go. She hoped, somehow, that man would return. But the man she loved was gone. One morning, Obafemi came to her, suddenly warm, smiling. He said, "Let us go to the forest. There is a tree I want to show you. It is sacred. I want us to pray there." Aderonk hesitated. The dream returned to her mind, the pit, the shovel. Her fingers trembled, but he touched her hand gently, the way he used to, and said, "I want us to start again. I want peace." And so she followed him. They walked through the thick bushes, past the stream, and deep into the silent part of the forest, where even the leaves seemed to listen. As they reached a clearing, Femi paused beside a wide, fresh pit already dug. Aderonk stopped walking. "Why is there a hole here?" she asked, her voice barely louder than the wind. But Femi said nothing. He stepped behind her, then pushed her in. She screamed. Her back hit the bottom hard. She looked up and saw him staring down, his eyes empty, his hands trembling as he grabbed a sack of earth. "Femi," she cried. "Why? Why are you doing this?" He didn't answer. He just began to shovel. One handful, then another, and another. The earth rained down on her chest, her face, her legs. She screamed until her voice gave out. She pleaded. She gasped. But the man who once kissed her forehead after night prayers kept digging. "And now I must ask you, what kind of evil buries love with his own hands? What kind of man silences the voice that once called him husband? Let me know in the comments, because what happens next will leave even the spirit speechless." The forest fell silent. The last handful of earth covered her face. Obafemi stood over the pit, breathing heavily, his hands muddy, his heart pounding, not from guilt, but from fear and anticipation. He believed it was done. The sacrifice had been made. He returned home that evening, burnt the clothes he wore, and told the villagers Aderonk had traveled to visit a sick aunt in another village. A few raised their brows in doubt, but no one dared question him. After all, he was respected, trusted, and in the days that followed, Obafemi's life began to change. First, his harvest tripled. Buyers came from towns he had never heard of. He was gifted a chieftaincy title. Men bowed before him. Women admired him. He built a bigger house. He bought more land. He had become the man Baba Rogbo promised, the man the world would not forget. But peace never came. At night, he heard knocking sounds beneath his bed. The wind outside whispered Aderonk's name. The goat bleated at midnight. His shadow began moving even when he stood still. And then, something worse. Villagers began seeing a woman in white, wandering near the cocoa farm. Her feet never touched the ground. Her face looked like Aderonk's, but hollow, sad, and glowing faintly in the moonlight. Obafemi dismissed it as nonsense, until one evening, during a heavy storm, there was a knock on his door. When he opened it, there she stood, Aderonk, alive. Her face was scarred with soil, her eyes sunken but steady. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm, too calm. "You buried me, Femi, but the earth rejected your offering." He stumbled backward, fell to his knees. "It's not possible. You were dead. I buried you myself." She looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, "Yes, but I didn't die. The spirits heard my cry, and the ancestors gave me breath, not to live, but to return." That night, the truth shattered like glass in the village. The herbalist disappeared. Femi was dragged to the elder's hut. He confessed everything, his greed, the sacrifice, the ritual. Women wept. Men spat on the ground in shame. Aderonk, with grace, refused revenge. She left the village that same moon cycle, her head held high, wrapped in a white scarf, walking into the hills, where it is said she became a healer for wounded women and forgotten souls. And Obafemi, he lost everything. His farms dried. His wealth vanished. His new house caught fire without a matchstick. He wandered the village like a madman, mumbling to himself, digging holes with his bare hands, looking for something he could never bury deep enough. His guilt. Now tell me, what kind of man gains a world, but loses his soul? Can wealth born from wickedness ever bring peace? Let me know what lesson you're taking from this story in the comments. And if you want more like this, you already know what to do.